Hello, we are recording now. This is meeting number 30 of the Clojure Visual Tools group. And today it is yet another session of workflow demos. And today we'll focus on the use of large language models within Emacs, the Emacs editor for Clojure development. And we have two presenters, Ovi and Adham, who will soon present themselves. And we also have Baruch, who is a future presenter. And so maybe Baruch will also say something. And then we will begin with the presentations. Thanks everybody for joining. We are about 10 people at the moment, maybe more will join in a moment. We're using diverse hours, so today is a little smaller. It is the morning for a few of the presenters. Yeah, so Ovi, hello, would you like to say something about yourself, about your topic today?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Ovi Stoica. I've been doing the software development for about 8, 9 years, and I've been doing Clojure for 3 or 4 years now. I related to the topic at hand with Emacs development and AI. I've been working with Emacs for the last year, and admittedly, entering Emacs it's really hard. It took me like 5 tries to actually commit to like, yeah, Emacs is now my editor. And but once you get it and you start customizing your configuration, you start to see the power, and especially once you're comfortable a bit with Clojure, you can grasp other Lisps and you can do a lot of glue code and personalize your workflow. And we'll actually see, like, most of the things that I will demonstrate in this workflow were built with AI. So LLMs now will help you do a lot of eLisp to personalize your workflow. So yeah, that's all about me.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And Adham, would you like to say something about yourself, about the topic?
Yes, thank you, Daniel. My name is Adham Omran. I am a backend developer and data analyst. I've been working in software for around 3 years now. Two of these are going to be with Clojure, so I'm fairly uh, like new to development, but at the same time I'm using Clojure, which is not the sort of the usual case where people have like 5, 10 years of experience, then they move to Clojure. So I sort of have like a the eyes of someone who just got into programming and is using a language that is sort of rumored or has the like they call it the aura of being very difficult to learn, and here I am doing work with it. So I like to I like to talk about like beginner workflows. I did a training for people who are new to programming, and I did that with Clojure, and there is also very very successful. Like I even got one of them to like who's now working with me as a junior developer, and I think that's like very lovely as a story for Clojure, being beginner friendly in some senses. As for today with LLMs, unlike Ovi, I sort of started with Emacs before I got into Clojure. I've been using Emacs for around 4 to 5 years because I was really into like note taking, personal knowledge management. Then that got like Emacs got me into Emacs Lisp. Emacs Lisp got me into Lisps, and then I started looking into a Lisp to use for work. So that got me into Clojure, and then here I am today. I'll be talking about how I use LLMs like sort of day to day in data analysis and like sort of building my tooling, and also like a few of some Emacs Lisp functionality written by an LLM. So uh, it's a very fascinating topic, very new topic, and I'm very excited. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And we also have Baruch with us. And Baruch, thank you for joining today. Baruch is a future presenter who will also maybe tell a little bit about about uh, these topics today. So Baruch, if you wish, maybe you would like to say something about yourself, about your future topics you wish to
Yeah,
discuss.
sure. My name is Baruch Berger. I come from the Netherlands. I live in Amersfoort right now. I was born and raised there actually, and I've lived in South Korea and China in the past 10 years. And I've been using Clojure for a really long time. It was also one of the first languages that I was introduced to back in college. I studied software engineering, and yeah, actually, you got to feel blessed that one of the first languages you use professionally is Clojure, because I know a lot of programmers who are very burned out on programming, but Clojure is definitely, I'm still not burned out on it. I really like programming in Clojure, and I think that if it was a different language, it might have been different because, yeah, I don't know. The focus on immutability makes it so much more pleasurable, and especially actually the interactive part of Lisps where you continuously are very close to your environment. It makes it so that programming is not that, debugging is not that frustrating. So yeah, it's good to have as a first language, in my opinion. So yeah, I was introduced to Clojure by someone who's well known in the community. His name is Borgdude. He made Babashka. He was my teacher actually at the time in school. At the time, he had a short period where he was a teacher, and then he quit to become full-time Clojure dev. That's an interesting fact about me. And nowadays, I'm working for a bioinformatics company in Belgium, and I'm working with a couple other devs on building a platform that allows multiple types of bioinformatics analysis. And I'm mostly working in the browser, so I have most experience with Clojure script. And I'm building something that revolves around having scans of biological tissue from a microscope, really high resolution, like multiple gigabytes of space for a file, and then having other modalities, so different types of scanners that measure different parts of the same tissue and having them overlap and then do analysis on that. And I'm building software to make that easier. And that's it for me, I guess. Oh, yeah, to relate it to LLMs, LLMs have been an obsession for me since GPT-4 came out. I was like, whoa, this is actually not just an autocomplete on steroids. It's really, it understands things, and I've been using it a lot. So personally, the last half year, I've mostly only been using Cloud Sonnet 3.5 because it's just head and shoulders above the rest. But I also have a pretty strong computer that runs local large language models. And I've been, looking to see if I can find any that are good enough to have tool calling. It's a little bit disappointing. They're not that great, especially compared to Cloud, but they are getting a lot better. And I expect that this year we'll finally see something that is as good as GPT-4 and will have support for tool calling. Yes, a couple of days ago, there was a new large language model released by DeepSeek that I've been using. It's really quite good. It's a reasoning model like OpenAI's O1. It's really cool to have running locally. So I'll stop hogging the time now.
Small thing related to this, and maybe like a small introduction. We're gonna do a regular meeting on discussing LLMs and AI in the Clojure context, starting in February. The first candidate for the date is I think, let me not mistake this because I didn't put it down, but it's somewhere in the second half of February. So maybe keep in tune for that. And especially what you said about tool use, that's one of the first things I would like for us to cover is like the new model context protocol, where you can define how your applications share data to easily accessible to LLMs, sort of like LSP, but for LLMs. And it's
it's by Anthropic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't used it yet, but one of my colleagues asked me about it.
Great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we'll hear more on that later today, maybe, and on future meetings. So now we will begin with Ovi's presentation. And we have a lot of time. So Ovi, you're invited to begin when you like.
Yeah, give me a second to share my screen. Should be this one. Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, and I saw the time was like 20 to 25 minutes, so I'm just gonna put like a 25-minute Pomodoro here just to have it like a quick check there.
Oh, yeah. We have a little more, but it is good to have some time for discussion. And
Let me make this like, so is the font okay?
yes.
Okay, cool. So hi, I'm Ovi, and today we're gonna look at some libraries and my personal workflow within Emacs for AI, and it's gonna be mainly focused on Clojure, but I use this for other languages as well. So I'm just gonna start with the libraries that I'm using. So the first one, it's GPTel. And I think this one is the de facto nowadays for Emacs, and everybody's using it. Essentially, it is uh, LLM inference from anywhere, from the mini buffer, from a side panel, from whatever place, and you can use any model you like, provided that you you configure your own API key and things like that. So let's start with directives. Now, GPTel comes with GPTel menu, and here, let's see, for example, directives, you can think of them as the system message, and you can create hard-coded directives that you use a lot and you switch within them. So I have a lot of them. And I'll cover some of them. So for example, the AI expert prompt is something that I use for like machine learning, for me to understand like, hey, I'm a professional software developer, so I know software development terms, but I don't know machine learning terms most of the time, or Python libraries, or for example, when it says tensor or things like that, I don't know those things. Please explain those to me in another software development concept or do parallels. Clojure expert, Lisp expert, JavaScript, TypeScript expert, Mali expert. This one I use a lot actually, and how I did it, I took from the Mali README, because that README is huge, like the important parts, and then added some other things that I wanted, and I just used that one. Another thing we'll cover is you can basically, like, the nice thing with Clojure is that being so abstract, you get very little code. So you can essentially sometimes just make the whole repository just a prompt, give it to an LLM and say, hey, I want to understand this thing. And I will actually share a tool for that. Another one I use a lot is UIX converter. So this is basically to convert from, let me just go and explore these. Uh, prompts. How I do this, basically, I just have them inside the directory and I write them in Markdown, and at load time, I just load all of them. I'm going to share my Emacs config for everybody who's curious, but let's explore the Clojure one. And it's basically, here are your competencies, SIGP mastery, Clojure specific stuff, core async, whatever I need, concurrency handling, data-oriented programming, and so on. The UIX one, it's basically similar to that. You are a language. This one I copy pasted from the UIX documentation. It's there for you to basically give it JSX or HTML, and it will convert it to UIX format. And let's look at the Mali one. So this one is larger. Let me see how much it has. It has like 1,200 lines. So this one is gonna be hefty. But I use it especially if you like, for example, complex types like this with multi-dispatch, right? And it's quite handy. Although even with this one, Claude sometimes will make some mistakes. Going back to this. And for creating new directives, let's take, for example, I need language. I need create a LLM prompt for a common Lisp expert LLM. And what I'm gonna do is select tools. We're gonna talk about this. Set system message, prompt expert. And I use the URN AI prompt engineer specialized in blah, 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 right? And my model, I'm gonna use Claude. It was already selected to be Claude, so I'm not gonna do that. Context list 2000, all right. And now I just hit enter. and I put it to ask me some clarifying questions about what kind of things it should need. I'm not gonna spend some time with this. But yeah, it's basically writing the prompt. What I do is I just copy it, I put it in the directory with the other markdown files, and then I just reload and I have a new prompt that I can reuse wherever. So yeah, that's one thing. Models that I use, Claude, as was mentioned before, this is my default. It's good. It still has issues sometimes, and we're gonna talk about how to sometimes prompt it to give better results. Google Gemini I use for extremely large contexts because it can handle 1 million token context. So for example, my use case for this is I give it a full code base that in which I want to understand a very discrete behavior. My concrete use case is I'm doing real-time AI voice, and I want to understand, for example, in a similar library in Python, how they handle interruptions in the flow of the conversation, let's say. And this is one of the use cases where you want to do this fast. And OpenAI o1, I don't use this that much. The latest, I actually used o1 mini. The latest use case for this is, for example, I'm doing some prompt engineering for a client for phone calls, and I don't want to stay on the phone to ensure the AI does the correct conversation. I just basically simulate the phone call through text, and I just prompt it, further perfect my prompt with it. And now DeepSeek models, the R1 model, I want to also add that one to my GPTel config. I currently just have it in autocomplete in file, but we're gonna talk about that. Prompting. So how you prompt things. This is, let me show you a repository which is called Code to Prompt, and it's basically a Rust CLI tool, which you can give it a repository and it will transform it into a prompt. It will copy it to your clipboard, or you can pipe it to a file. It has different templates you can use, and I've used this in my so this is my personal library for real-time AI, although this one is kind of outdated now, and you can see it has 4,000 lines, and this is basically the whole code of the library put in one prompt. Moving on. So I use this whenever I need to basically have a conversation with a prompt, with a repository. And snippets is something that I found myself that from time to time I reuse the same snippets with AI. So I created a snippet manager, which is a transient library which has some of my prompts, although I think it's a bit outdated now, but I'm gonna with Claude, for example, one of the things I don't like about it is the fact that, let's say you are thinking about an architecture for a project, and you tell it, hey, how about we do it this way, right? Or I'm thinking about doing it this way, and it's always gonna say you're right. It's always gonna say, yeah, such a good idea, go for it. And what I do now is the this thing doesn't work because I don't know yet how to do transient that well, but it's on insert right now. And let's do the debate one. It didn't work, of course. So copy, debate, put it here. God damn it, it didn't work. Snippets. Anyway, I'm just gonna show them. So yeah, my 50-50 is basically, hey, I could either go this way or this way. Please do a detailed paragraph arguing for each of these solutions, but do not jump to a solution because like early in the generation, if it commits to one version, it will just go with that one. So you just want to say, hey, just put 2 paragraphs for either of them, and only once you finish, go ahead and provide your suggestion for which for a particular answer. And summarize the discussion. This is something I use because many times, let's say you are in a conversation for a difficult topic or something like that, and you hit a block where you're just going in circles and nothing works anymore, and you just want to start fresh. Maybe put some new context in, restart the conversation, but you don't want to lose everything. So you basically, this is just a summarization prompt. And I'm gonna, at the end, for anybody curious, I'm gonna share this code if you want to take this. So this is basically just like do a summarization with all the insights, but don't include assumptions or things that might be true, but that we don't currently know for sure, problems, and how a programmer can do this. It generates this. I just copy this and start a new chat. So yeah, these are my snippets. So it usually works. Now it doesn't, but you know. And by the way, all of this thing, this is all of this is generated with AI. I basically just at the end did like some small tweaks, but even with eLisp, AI can take you like 80% of the way. If you have like a small thing you have to do, just I just use this, put the eLisp expert prompt, and then just say hey, and maybe I give it some context. And we're gonna talk about how to give it context in a very easy and accessible way. Right. Tool use. This is experimental. GPTel just merged this branch with tool use 3 days ago or 2 days ago, something like that. In order for me to use it, I was on the branch with tool use. Yeah. To use this. And let's look a bit at it. Yeah. And it's basically just GPTel make tool, the function itself that you want to call, and then the name, the description, arguments, and you describe those, and the category. And one that I added, just
Can you give like a high-level summary of what that tool concept is? I haven't yet.
Yeah, sure. So for example, okay, so my hands are gonna be the user and let's say you have a conversation with the LLM, and you can tell it, hey, you have access to this tool, which is get the weather, right? In a particular city. And then the user asks, hey, what's the weather in that particular city? The AI is not gonna call the function. It's gonna emit a message, which is like tool call request. Please call this function with this argument. For example, if the user says, what's the weather like in Bucharest? The AI is gonna emit a tool call request, call this function with the argument Bucharest, call the function get weather with the argument Bucharest. And it's the responsibility of
like dynamic context, you could say. So it makes
it's something like that. For example, in your code, in your program's code, when you see a tool call request, you call that function that you declared, and then you put that back to the AI. I can give you a better example of this. Twilio, briefly, how are we with time? We are okay, kind of. Wait. So this is the tool that I've been working on to do real-time AI pipelines. And here's the LLM context, right? So you say you are a voice agent, blah, blah, blah. And you say, you have these tools which are available to you, which is get weather, get current weather of location, blah, blah, blah. Here are the parameters, required town. And then you also say a registered function. So you register the actual Clojure function that this would call. And it's basically just a string saying this, the weather in this thing is 23 Celsius, right? And if you think about the conversation as a chat history, as an array of chat messages, what calling the function will do is just put back a string with a tool result in the chat history. So the LLM has that in the context now.
So, and I will note that to me, the most powerful thing about large language models is the fact that they can do tool calling well. And it's also what puts Sonnet head and shoulders above the rest, because it just knows how to steer itself really well if you give it the output. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, let's do a demonstration maybe. So Elisp expert and let's say, so tool, select tools. I just created some tools, which is like list the project files. And it's, yeah, it's just gonna do like in the current project. And let's hope it works, because last time, okay, so it doesn't, no. Tools, project.
Yes, very similar like web templating functions. A quite simple concept in that sense.
What are the current tools in this project? So now it calls the tool. You could put like a message in your mini buffer to know. You see, basically it knows this is my Emacs config. This is my project of Emacs, and it knows how to do that. It's a lot, like this is super early development in GPTL, and I am like, there's a developer right now who just saw this and will do with this is gonna be so cool when it comes out. He's gonna do a RAG of all of the Emacs documentation and provide GPTL with a function to do RAG search on the Emacs documentation, and basically at that point you're fully gonna be able to ask that AI agent, let's say, questions about Emacs documentation. He's gonna go and look it up for you and then come back with the result. And you can trust that result way more, as opposed to now you can still do that, but it's more like based on its training. Strictly on that, let's do something like Emacs command to get current project. And here I invoke the menu, I do Emaxer, which is like just built-in command. And let's try this. I'm not using project current. Usually I just do replace and just do that on the replace. That's a handy little thing if you just want to do a fast command. Okay, so we covered tools. Next, Minuet AI. This is just recently came out, and this is essentially it's a, please go to it. 10%, okay. This is basically a better Copilot. As you can see, so it's last week. I tried it 2 days ago and it's very nice. It's basically Copilot, but you can do completions and it can provide you multiple completion candidates in the mini buffer or as an overlay, the classic Copilot overlay that you see here. And you can configure whatever completion engine you want. I wouldn't, to be honest, like Claude. For me, I think now it gets expensive the more you put context into your prompts. So having this also on auto mode and it querying all the time, I don't think would be the best. Currently, I'm using DeepSeek for this, and let's look at it.
How does it decide on the context that it sends?
It has a, I can show you that. It has
ETL, it's easy to see the context, and
yeah,
it's
basically it's
yeah.
just gonna have context from the current file, but you can modify this, I think. So context after cursor, context before cursor, and current position in the file. And you can set how much context from the file. For example, if you have a 10,000 line file, you don't want to give it all of that because it will be expensive. You just want to give like maybe the previous 500 lines and the next 500 lines.
Yeah, it would be nice with across all the tools to have some kind of a context understanding, that if you're on one module, that you could like take the whole chain of the modules that you are working with.
I'm gonna actually show something similar to that, which is one of the things I created for myself. But yeah, let me see if I have it. Minuet auto suggestion mode. Let's just wait a second. All right, it does that and it does more. And now you can do like, I have some, as you can see, like it, and you can accept either one or all of them, right? And let's do like Minuet. I forgot how it is to prompt it from the mini buffer, but anyway, it has one from the mini buffer. And currently how I use it is just sometimes if I'm lazy, I'm just gonna, because it's still annoying. The annoyingness of Copilot prompting there is still there. This one at least is, hey, put it, and I just want to see it either in the mini buffer as an overlay on demand. And it's nice because you can configure what backend to use. Specifically for me, it's DeepSeek at this moment. So yeah, that's that. Please check it out. And this is my own code, and by my own code, I mean AI prompted by me to write this code. But this is this. So the problem, right? GPTL is awesome, but I many times want a side panel chat, which is per project. So let's go to this is VoiceFN, my real-time thing, and so as you can see what files are in this project. This is another thing that I was testing earlier, and it has you could call it history, right? Let's make it a bit smaller. And the nice thing is if you go into another project, this one doesn't have the same conversation there because it would be annoying, and that's what usually happens with GPTL. So you kind of have a per project prompt to call. One thing which is not yet there, and I will do that, is, for example, to have per project context set, because it's still the global GPTL context. For example, if you see here, the prompt is still Emacsr, and it has two tools for like list project and stuff like that. So I still need to be careful what tools it has and what prompt it has. But for example, what I usually do here is just set it to Clojure expert, and and some handy things I have here. Basically, I have to toggle this sidebar, and this is not quite a how do you call it, a normal buffer. It's a kind of a sidebar because you cannot just make this one the only one with control X1, for example. You cannot just make it your sole buffer. Other handy things I have is clear the project buffer. So you can see the AI project agent clear panel. A cool thing I put here, for example, if it generates some code, yeah, this one is good. So I have here an issue, and if I call it to fix this error, lint, AI project agent sent lint feedback. So basically what you do, if you have LSP or CLJ condo, and it will give you feedback through fly check, you can just send it, and let's look at the prompt. It's basically, please help me fix this error, the file, the code with the problem. Here is the error. And like the surrounding context is exactly like Minuet will do it. And I have it like, I think I have 500 lines above and below for context. And let's see what it answers. Looking at your code, I believe there's a require statement. So yeah, so timbre. And it got that wrong because it's actually, I use telomere. One other thing I said a long time that I will do is auto scroll, because GPTL doesn't by default auto scroll the conversation as a value statement, because it says I don't want to disturb the user. So it does that. So telomere, and that will fix it for you. I don't have like inline completion, sort of like how Cursor does it. It's also a bit of a thing that I wouldn't trust it, maybe yet, to do that kind of thing. There is something like that for Emacs, which is like Aider.
Isn't the GPTL, it has the refactor. You can trigger it from the menu.
Yeah. But it has like rewrite, but with something like this, what you expect it to do, with that you need to select, for example.
Yeah, sometimes it works, but it has this like diffing utility.
Yeah, I
Kind
saw
of,
it.
but it's a bit tricky. Yeah.
It's not exactly what I would like to use yet, but still, there's not something better. There are some things that are coming, for example, continue.dev. It's something that I'm looking forward to see, but I haven't put that in my notes. But anyway, let's look at a workflow example. So I'm experimenting with Flow to change how I'm doing. How much more time I have? It just ended.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to converge in 5 minutes or so, and then we
Cool.
can have a few questions. Yeah, thanks.
So my current way of doing things is I do a pipeline config, and then I list the processors, and this is basically where audio in comes in. This is the transcriptor, so it's like what turns audio to text. This is a context aggregator, so to give you the chat history. This is the LLM, which takes the transcripted text and answers in real time. And this is the context aggregator for the assistant. And this is what transforms to speech the text generated by the LLM. And then you give that speech to output. And it's a nice way, but since Rich Hickey added flow, I wanted to see, hey, is there a possibility for me to integrate how flow works and to create a pipeline using flow to do that kind of thing? And what I'm gonna use is GPTel add. And you can see basically now my file turned black like that. And that means it's now in the context of my current AI. So if you see context one buffer, and you can use this, the nice thing is you can use this with DRED. So for example, let's say I want to give it more context, like the frames and the pipeline itself. So now those are added, right? And what I want to do is go to flow, also add this one, and add this whole directory. Recursively add files, yes. So basically, if we now go back to this thing, you can see I have 2 buffers and 5 files. And actually, I actually have a conversation here already with it. But let's this is the prompt. I also included voice FN experiments flow. I didn't include that. I did. And here's the message. I have a proc started. Here's my problem, for example, that the flow abstraction doesn't really work well with when you have input to a processor, and that processor also does async communication with another processor. So it just does like sync transforms in a pipeline. So what would you suggest based on this? And let's delete all of this. And now it has all of that context, and I just talk to it. And let's say, and now we wait a bit. It will look at the files. And yeah, from here on out, what I do is I just have a conversation. I look at what it gives me. And let me see, for example, here. One thing I don't know why the whole highlighting doesn't work, but you need to do like a new line to do that. But after that, it works. So, okay, so yeah, you see it did a transform and it tried to resolve my issue. But yeah, that's a demonstration of like how I use it most of the time. It's if I have a complex question, I'm just gonna add some files to the context. You need to be careful because if you add like 1,000 lines of code, you're gonna very fast have a big bill from Anthropic. But yeah, that's
Once happened. I had like my huge notes inbox thing, and it went into the context. But they had like a 50 cents maximum daily billing limit.
okay.
So
You
it hit
set a
that.
limit. Yeah, that's good.
No, it's default. Yeah. Looks really cool, this setup. I picked up some parts there. I'm gonna try.
So yeah, that's my presentation. That's all I have for now. Things that I'm really looking forward to is the RAG augmented Emacs documentation search. That's gonna be awesome. Tool use, I think tool use with GPTel will actually provide some of the functionality that Cursor actually has, like writing in a buffer, knowing all your entire project, doing like a repository map. Because for example, what happens in Cursor is, hey, do this thing, and it goes, looks at your project, says, oh, okay, you have these files, and it goes and says, hey, for this task, which of these files are the most relevant? So it does like a, let's say, agentic thing with like task 1, task 2, and reasoning. From these files, I think the best context is in these 3 files. Go into those files, take the most relevant pieces from those files, or maybe construct a repository map, and then fix that issue using those. So I think with tool use and GPTL, things like this are gonna gradually evolve even further. And there are more AI tools coming, and there is another one from Ahyat, which is called LLM. I haven't covered it because I didn't go into it, but apparently it's similar to GPTL, but it's more focused on programmatic use, like writing your eLisp to do a lot of the LLM calling. And there is also MCP.el, which is Model Context Protocol for Emacs, but it's more of a client of MCP. So it's not a server, it's not a provider of, hey, here are the things you can do in Emacs. It's more of a way to call other Model Context Protocol servers from Emacs, let's say. So it's how you can let GPTL access your browser, let's say, something like that. And yeah, that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Ovi.
you.
Yeah, and we will have more time to chat about it later. Maybe let us have a few short questions to Ovi, questions or comments by anybody.
It's sort of like orthogonal to the talk, but how did you get the browser to show in the buffer?
You need to compile Emacs with X widgets, and if you have X widget support when you do browse URL, it's gonna do it in URL. It's gonna do it in the X widget browser.
That is very nice. I did not know about that.
For example, if you're on Mac, it's like compile Emacs, and it's gonna be like with Emacs Mac -- with X widget support. You would think it's super useful. It's useful sometimes for like very static sites. If you have something where you're authenticated, it doesn't persist cookies.
Yeah.
Have
But
you
still, it's
used
nice sometimes.
GPT? Sorry. Have you used GPTL images yet?
No, but I know it's a possibility to use them, like to do ignoring media, sending media. I haven't managed to get it. For example, I want to do a screenshot, right? And I have this screenshot, but I saw people that did it, and it doesn't work. I don't know. I haven't even, for example, I have maybe, I don't know if you can see it. I have like a clipboard manager. It kind of put it there, I think.
Ask a question about it.
Yeah, I'm trying to do
use
that.
it?
Let me remove all the context. And tool call no, right? So it doesn't do tools. What's this? See, screenshot. No, so it does. I don't think it's picked up. I think you need to do like there's a GPTL image or something. I don't know. I haven't used that yet.
There is a lot to think about now, and I think one of the things a few of us are hoping for is to follow your setup and just write and then ask more, and probably that is what might happen, and we'll follow up on the chat. And another thing is this little demonstration of the new flow async namespace. And I'm wondering, Ovi, whether that's something you wish to continue, or you think we should go further with this experiment.
Currently, wait, I think I still have it. Excalibur. So I don't think I'm gonna pursue it further until reach response to this use case, and I've been discussing it intensely in the core racing. For example, what it does is like you have introduced processes which are async and put stuff on the pipeline or on the graph, and then you have synchronous ones which do just transforms. So it's like gets input, applies stuff to it, gives it back, but it's not async. It should be like sync. So if you have something where this process also gets input but communicates with an external process and then asynchronously puts stuff back on the pipeline, in the current setup, I haven't found it to be useful in this manner. So until I get a better answer to this, I don't think I'm gonna pursue it further. Although the graph, the protocol and the abstraction Rich did to do graphs and connections in a core async way is really nice. I really like that abstraction and how he wrote the code for it. Specifically for me, when I was trying to do like, I don't know, when you're not like you're trying to do code that's like with super detailed named variables and stuff, and then you go and see Rich's code where it's like px, this is IOK, and you're like, what is this variable? But then you kind of infer it from the function invocation, and it's this type of thing. It's cool. Not sure if it's idiomatic sometimes, but it's cool to see, and it's a bit encouraging to see that he does many of the things that I thought weren't good to do. But yeah.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Yeah. Yeah. Any more questions to Ovi? Yeah, we'll have more time to ask later. And really, thank you so much for this. It is a great inspiration to see, the way you use everything in harmony. And yeah, we will now continue with Adham's presentation. Would you like to begin, Adham?
Yes, thank you. I hope the audio is a bit better. Is it?
Yes, it is.
It's good.
Yes, great. Yeah. Turns out it was just mic selection. All that. So, okay, so I'll be talking about LLMs for Clojure and Emacs. Some of the things I am going to talk about were covered by Ovi, so I might be skipping over those and focusing on the things that are unique to my showcase. So the who, I already talked about that. So just development. I've been doing this for like a very short period compared to many people. I work at a company called Capital Business Hub. We aim to empower SMEs with research and data-driven solutions. And the project I mainly work on is called iData, which is basically a data platform. And we just aim to activate the role of data and decision making with data-driven solutions. So I sort of like when the whole GPT thing exploded, and let me also do a like timer with or Pomodoro for consistency. I sort of had some ideas on, hey, why should I even use these LLMs? Why should I have something else write the code for me? So after some experimentation, I sort of came to some consensus about like some reasons for me to use it. I found that it really cuts and saves time by writing things that I know about, and that it can suggest really good solutions for things I should know about, like idiomatic patterns, documentation, or as like Ovi showed, like just dumping the Mali README and then having things get extracted from that. I've done like something very similar to that, like just a couple of days ago. It's just really fascinating about that. When I use it is like I think of working with an LLM a bit differently in that it's just a different style of thinking about the problem. It's like having a conversation rather than just throwing it into the machine and expecting a solution to occur. I don't think that's like a very healthy way of working with it, because you're not really thinking about the problem. You're offloading the thinking to something else, which I think results in code that you don't understand and that you can't verify to work. So I sort of tackle a problem for 30 to 45 minutes before I ask an LLM if it's like a difficult and new problem, because I find the process of working with the problem to be like very informative, especially when it's like new to me or if it's like something difficult. Before I'm like, I start consulting an LLM for like potential solutions, and even then I'm not really thinking about finding a definite solution for something. And so I just said that like I want to have an idea of what an answer should be. The two kinds of LLMs that I deal with are like by providers such as like OpenAI, Claude, Anthropic. I use Claude on a personal style, like I have the professional subscription, and for ChatGPT, I like it's provided by the business, so I use the chat interface, and I use O1 and 4.0 for various purposes. As for self-hosted, Ovi did a just did a very fantastic demonstration of GPTL. Like I love everything about it. The transient menus, custom prompts. I only began using it like 2 weeks ago, so I haven't really customized it. So I'm just using it with just like bare minimum GPT send and GPTL send, and that's all. It does require some hardware for you to have it if you're going to use the self-hosted route, but with GPTL you can obviously use API tokens for many providers. I haven't mentioned Copilot because I have used it for around 7 months before I eventually told business, yo, just cancel the subscription. It's like it's not worth it, because I don't like the what's called the LLM pause, where you just smash the code, smash the doc string, and then you just wait for it to just magically solve the thing. It's like like I found it to be very hindering, and it sort of breaks the flow of programming and breaks the flow of thinking about the problem. And for my experience, and maybe maybe like 7 months ago it was different, but it was not as good as I expected it to be, or it was not as good as the like communication and chat alternative flow of working. So my use cases, I'll be discussing these 4 use cases very concisely. Documentation, idiomatic patterns, translation, and work with Emacs Lisp. For documentation, I have like worked with 2 ways of working documentation. The first is to just get the documentation out for a single function, and the other is to understand larger sort of data manipulations and transformations. Sometimes, like when I'm working with tablecloth, I find myself writing like 50 to 70 lines of just transforming. And while at the time I understand all the small bits and pieces, when I sort of zoom out into the entire thing, I found it to be very like confusing sometimes, especially if I come to the same code like 1 month or 2 months down the line. I found just throwing that and asking for documentation to be like a very successful flow of getting the data out. And I have this example right here with Claude and some work I did. Like this is I sort of crafted, not really crafted. I sort of worked this prompt from the documentation of the Clojure style guide, where like I basically took the points that they have mentioned, and then I just wrote, "Hey, you're a Clojure developer," and all that stuff. And I also in my code I try to have a Mali schema for as many functions as possible. So I also provide the Mali schema, which I found to be very useful for the LLM, because it provides the context on the shape of the input and the shape of the output, which helps it actually form a well written documentation in addition to everything up here. So for example, I had this uh, function that does a preparation, that prepares data for a bar chart, and this is the schema. There's like some keys that come in, and it outputs basically just a sequence of maps with like name, y, and responders. And my doc string was very bare compared to like the work being done here. Like at a glance, I'm like having some columns, I'm reversing some stuff, I'm mapping some stuff, and then I'm getting the output in some form. And these don't map to each other, nor does it explain how the input is being used, nor where the output is coming from. So it just takes a while to think about the thing, but it produces this like very like I like this kind of documentation, because when I come to it after a while, I can just read it, and I would have all the context needed for a particular function in my code. So we have the headline doc, doc string, and then what it's doing, it's taking some keywords, it's manipulating that keyword, and then it's each map in the return has like this name, this y, and like for example, the y is just going to be the mean, it's going to be formatted a specific way. And then I love that it mentions other like functions, because it helps me connect with other things in the code. An example is always great to have. It did, however, like I know that the input should not be this, and I just provided it with the like correct input, and then it just updated its documentation, and like it just became better as a thing. And I also what I talked about with like documentation helping refactors or helping rewrites. After this, I went to the like the Clojure expert prompt. I pasted the entire thing, and I was like, just refactor the function. And given like I've tried this with the multiple functions before, and I found that having the documentation prior, and of course confirming that the documentation actually does what it does, and having the documentation and having the prompt, it actually gives a very well structured rewrite. Like for example, in this case, it sort of pulled apart the various pieces of logic in the single function into a bunch of smaller functions, which is always lovely to see, because that means I can test them better. And it kept the style of documentation throughout all of these functions. Without the documentation prompt from before, it would, like most of the time, Claude, for me at least, does not write the documentation, just has the defin, has the form, and all of that. And of course, it's always nice to have like why it's doing what it's doing. And this is like sort of my documentation use case for a function. I have another use case which is for a much larger namespace, but unfortunately I cannot share that because it is work related. But what I have done in that scenario is I basically gave it the Clojure expert prompt. I also gave it some direction on how I want the doc to be, like the doc to be written, and it wrote that. And my test for the successfulness of the result is that I gave it to the junior developer that I have, and I was like, read this document and then tell me what you understood about this namespace. And this was like a 1500 2000 line namespace, so it wasn't small by our code base's standard. And after he read the doc, he like had a very good idea of what's happening in the namespace. So I consider that a success, and I'm doing like this sort of namespace transformation for many more namespaces in the code base. Another thing I did, which is like sort of this idea of seeking idiomatic patterns and idiomatic style. I found that just using the Ovi shared this already, the Clojure expert doc, and then sort of prompting the LLM to write idiomatic code to be a very useful way. I found that I was able to reduce a lot of repetition in my code, sort of transform things from being iterative to being more functional. And this personal anecdote in the slides, just what I also already talked about, is like the refactoring after documentation yields better results in my experimentation than just saying, hey, refactor this code without any idea of the context or why it's doing what it's doing. A use case which I found to work surprisingly well is to translate Java into Clojure. Ovi already talked about like the translation of JavaScript into UIX, which is something I did not have in mind. but it's also within the same theme. Like, for example, I had this Google Sheets API, like Java code, which is this monstrous thing. Maybe this is not monstrous by Java standard, but it's like, I don't know Java. So like, for context, I've never written Java professionally. I've never done like any serious projects or work in Java. So when I came to Clojure, like zero Java. So this sort of use case is very useful to me because it helps it helps me understand, or at least it helps me work with a lot of Java code that exists out in the wild. And I also gave it the expert prompt, and the result that it gave me, I actually worked with a lot of this code before. This is sort of like a reprompt, because the original prompt is in ChatGPT, and it's now sort of way in the history back, way back in my history. So it was hard to pull it. But it does. But like, comparing this to the code I actually have in production and the code that's been running for a couple of months now, this is exactly the same. It's like, it's very, very useful to get an idea of like how to use Java libraries and translating them. And another use case I had was AWS JWT tokens. And this one, like, it did not have as much context for it. So I had to like go around and grab a lot of Java code and grab a lot of at some point I even reached into JS code just to get an idea of how the like the AWS Cognito JWT tokens work and how to decode them, how to get their information out. But eventually, with the help of the LLM, I was able to actually grok the entire context of the decoding, which is, very, very useful. Another thing I've been doing with LLMs is building Emacs list functionality. Here I'm saying it's not perfect because like it gets you like 75-80% of the way there, and then you just have to like just modify the thing, work on it, and just change it just a bit for it to work. But it's been very, very helpful in like working with the eLisp, which tends to be sometimes hard to use, especially with the documentation being like a giant HTML file. So feeding that into an LLM also helps. I've also like been doing some other experimentation, which involves just my workflow as a whole. So I'm trying to get into what's like I call like a perfect startup script, which basically sets up my entire workflow. Uh, I work with Nix, I work with Clojure, I work with AWS, I work with Docker, and I'm trying to round all of these things up. So I have like this very small Tmux script at the moment going, which basically spins up a bunch of windows, goes into the proper directories, SSHs into the AWS server, spins up the REPL. I'm also trying to get it to load all the namespaces in a project, and then running the Mali development to instrument all of the like Mali schemas that I have. So I'm working with an LLM to create something like it's a script, and then it will be talking to some eLisp. So I'm really looking into the GPTL tools thing. Maybe that will help me write the script faster than what I'm doing right now, which is trying to invoke eLisp from the CLI. Yeah, so that's also like another thing that exists within this Emacs Clojure ecosystems, like trying to get an LLM to like, I'm describing my entire workflow and then trying to get it to optimize it or write a script to just wrap the entire thing, and then I can like launch a single script and then have everything ready. Another thing I want to talk about is like when to not use an LLM, which is something I haven't heard a lot of discussion about. For me, I try to avoid using an LLM whenever I'm trying to learn something new, like for myself. Not use, but learn. So, for example, I'm trying to learn the Clojure walk library, and it's something that I have no experience with, like walking, like I think it's called walking down a tree structure. So If I get an LLM to like write the code for me at this stage, it would be code that I have no clue what it's doing really. So I would be producing code that is like not useful to me, and in the future I wouldn't be able to debug it. My current use case is that I'm trying to flatten a number of Mali routes, like actually all the Mali routes in my project, and I'm trying to extract the meta information about the middleware in it, because I have the authorization stuff in the middleware. So I'm trying to get a data structure that basically goes, hey, from this route, you have this authorization level. And the way Mali works is like you have a lot of nested vectors. So I need to walk down these nested vectors and then pull the like permissions and then pull the proper nesting of the vectors and nesting of the route. So I can probably get an LLM to write all of that for me, but 3 weeks later, I would have no clue how to use Clojure to actually properly like debug the code or modify it in the future. So this is one use case where I would actually avoid like using an LLM like very early. In my like for the resources, I was going to put the Clojure expert and all of that stuff, but we already covered these. The only thing I actually have that is sort of doesn't exist is my own prompt for the documentation, which is actually something I will enhance even further by taking what the Clojure style has in terms of the good and bad, which is I think is going to be useful for reinforcing the patterns that I wanted to use. So yeah, that is the prompt really quickly. So yeah, this sort of wraps up my very short presentation about how I'm using LLMs. Any questions? Any? None? All?
Just a request if you can link in the chat your prompts.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Adham. It helps a lot to hear your insights and observations about what goes wrong and what might be surprising. And yeah, we have time for questions. We have 15 minutes to the official end of this call. So if people have any questions to Adham, short questions about anything, that would be great. Or comments.
Yeah, I was just wanted to react to what you said about people don't talk about when not to use an LLM. Well, I'm kind of a maximalist on LLMs nowadays, but I do agree with your point that when you learn something, if you don't do the hard work of thinking things through, then you don't actually learn very well. But there's a flip side, which is LLMs have so much knowledge and they can explain stuff that you don't know yet. So if you use it as a teacher and really ask it questions and really engage with it, then you're doing the hard work of thinking and you will learn faster because it will know things that you don't. And so it's kind of a trade-off. But for example, in education, I think it's a net win. And I think you can see this in statistics as well, where people who generally didn't have good teachers available can use LLMs now as a teacher, and it's really helpful. On the other hand, am I still?
Okay.
I don't see you guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, on the other hand, yeah, if you expect it to do the thinking for you, then it doesn't always work.
Yeah. And I really like your approach to like asking it questions, which is like about his teaching. The only thing I sort of I'm very conservative about in terms of like having the LLM teach things is like the whole hallucination thing, which is when you're learning something new, you can't really detect when it's hallucinating things. Like when it writes Emacs Lisp to me and I look at that, I'm like, I'm fairly sure that function does not exist. Like even before I put the thing into the code. So with code, like it usually explodes in your face, but like with concepts and like knowledge, you don't really have a way to like throw it against the compiler and then have it explode. So like that's sort of my counter argument.
That's very true.
Yeah.
But I find one thing helpful there is that you can also, when you start, the problem is you won't maybe will not notice when it's hallucinating. And but if you do notice, then you can say, "Are you sure about that? Because something, this is my doubt." And then it will often talk back like, if it's really certain about it, then yeah. I know the earlier versions of GPT-4, they would bluff all the way through. But I think actually that might have been one of the first mover advantages that OpenAI has, where everybody will go to their expertise and say like, oh, then does it also know this? Does it also know that? And then it will start correcting GPT. And I think that is super valuable training data, right? Because someone with an expertise will immediately give their knowledge like, no, this is not correct. And I think that's perfect for OpenAI to learn from.
Another thing there with learning, I would say I experience a lot the thing where, let's say you have a question about Clojure or programming or stuff like that, and you go to ask on Clojurians. And if you do a detailed explanation of the concept and stuff like that, sometimes you don't even have to press enter on the question because you figured it out on your head because you took time to write the thing. Nowadays, I have those aha moments with LLMs when I try to describe a problem to them because I take the time to formally describe the problem. I don't even send the inference anymore because I know the solution. Or
Rubber ducky.
if I figure it out,
Yeah,
I
rubber
still
ducky,
get to see opinions, but yeah, that's a huge benefit, like to have a exactly here because I have sometimes even the opposite where I start by discussing with the LLM an approach to doing things, pros and cons, stuff like that, and only then I start coding, sort of like a hammock driven develop, like a hammock AI driven development.
Interesting.
Yeah, before we continue with the discussion, that is lovely. And let's see whether there is any question to Adham by anybody who hasn't asked anything. You can also write in the chat if you're not comfortable using your voice. And
I think
if you wish to ask something. Yeah, let us just check if there is anybody who wishes to say something.
I think one point maybe wasn't discussed is if you want to keep your projects in privacy. I've been quite a bit working mostly with the local LLMs. And then, it definitely helps with the Emacs and these tools when you have the lower level control and you actually know what is going with the context to the other service. But yeah, that's one point I've seen often, and one reason why I just started to feel wrong using Copilot and all these things without understanding what's happening very clearly with that communication. Because if you're working with some private stuff, then it's kind of just telling the server all your secrets. And
that's like another, like as you said, it's just one more reason not to use Copilot for me. And the other thing is that I actually enjoy like the concept of like local LLMs way more than like throwing it into the cloud LLMs, because like sort of like I have more control over it. And the other thing is I sometimes like would like to just disconnect the cable and just think about the problem. And being able to do that offline with just an LLM is just very nice. They do have, the hardware requirement for like high, like you need either high RAM and a very good CPU, or like throw it into a GPU and then pray it doesn't explode.
Yeah, it's not that bad actually. If you can get by with some 2018 Intel whatever, if you can keep it very succinct. There's even this that you could make a prompt and go have a walk and wait for it to finish. Something I've done sometimes, just experimenting with this. But yeah, there's definitely the Claude and these in certain problems. It just it's much better. I've had that experience also, so it's a bit restricted what you can do locally, definitely.
One thing I know will come in this area, so I have to tap in and see new development in the AI space, especially on voice. So I kind of have to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to watch some meetups from Los Angeles on voice and stuff. And one of the developments that's gonna come is like new architectures on LLMs. And for because one of the things that they predict will happen pretty soon is toys will have like their instead of like pressing a button and then the teddy bear saying I love you is actually gonna be a LLM there. So they need a new architecture to support like real time LLMs like that in a very small hardware. So those things are gonna come where it's actually gonna take API-based LLM inference many times, like for coding out of the picture, and most people will just use their local PC for that because it's way more convenient.
Yeah, definitely. It has more reach in many applications, and yeah, it has benefit to like toy with those. Maybe like what could you predict for like the 70B
I will
models?
stop you
Maybe
for a
those are.
moment. Maybe I apologize. I will stop you for a moment. We have 10 more minutes to the official time. And I propose we'll have one or two more questions to Adham. And then we can have a discussion. And maybe, Baruch, you also hoped to present something. So if you like, after the official time, if you have some time to stay, we can spend some time with that. Or have it another time. We can always schedule other calls. And so, any more questions to Adham before we continue? I wish to ask you one thing, and that is, you're not only programming, you're also building a team. And in your team, other team members probably use AI and probably use your code with AI. And I'm wondering, does it limit you in any way that you need to write some code, not only for your team members, but for the LLMs of your team members? And the reason I'm concerned is that we are creating open source libraries, and we want our libraries to be usable with LLMs, and we are not even thinking about it at the moment. And we might create something which is unusable in a certain way just because it is not LLM friendly, sadly. So that's something I'm wondering about.
Yeah, I've had this experience actually. The way I'm working with it is to have the docstring be as expressive as possible in the inputs and the outputs of the function. This is like another reason why I'm providing the Mali schema actually in the documentation prompt, is to have it embed the arguments into the docstring. And this appears again in the namespace documentation that I talked about, because it starts to link, the functions that it finds in the docstrings, which makes the description of the namespace more useful to be used, especially when you're like trying to ask it about the namespace, like, hey, how do I do X or how do I do Y? It will have a better chance of knowing what to do, just because there is a lot of context embedded within the function documentation by saying, hey, see also, or this function is meant to be used with like this function, and so on. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thank you. Yeah. So we have some time for a short discussion. So maybe Ovi and Adham, you have a little more to say and a way to conclude this part of the call. And then, afterwards, some people may wish to stay. I see Matthias may have a comment, and then maybe Baruch, you would like to show something if you like.
Yeah. So for me, my project, like I've been working on this for a really long time, so there's a lot to show. I could like really briefly show what I've been doing, because in my opinion, I've it's my own project, so I shouldn't say too good things about it. But I've seen nothing online that really showcases how good LLMs can be at tool calling. Like, of course, you have the agentic stuff. You have agents that build your code, and everybody hates them because they don't work yet. It's because they're too ambitious. But there's a middle ground where you can see this might start to work soon. And I think my project can show that. So I could show it for like 5 minutes and then maybe in a different presentation show more.
Yeah, that would be lovely. So let us maybe do that in a few moments. And I think Matthias wanted to say something.
Sorry, before Matthias goes, I actually have to leave for my own work meeting in about 30 minutes. Yeah. So this was very lovely. My very, very quick conclusion is that I think for Emacs as an editor, this is going to be a very, I don't want to say revolutionary, but it's going to be like a very interesting way of working with Emacs, because in Emacs, you're actually like, you know how in Clojure you're talking to a REPL, in Emacs you're basically living in the REPL and working from its own like Emacs interpreter, Emacs Lisp interpreter. And with the LLMs and with the ability to like prompt in place or prompt from a mini buffer, or having the side panel as Ovi has demonstrated, it's going to be, I think Emacs is on the crisp of having the option to be a living LLM interpreter, or a living LLM tool in itself, and not because like there is some functionality being added, but just because of how extensible Emacs is and its ability to just become this when you want it, and become a simple text editor when you so should desire to. And yeah, that's like my very quick conclusion. Thank you.
I agree with that. For example, in the history of Emacs, you see that a new development comes into the programming world, like LSPs, three-seater, and all of these things. And then it's instantly adopted into Emacs and possibly used in a way, in a more powerful way than it was originally intended. And currently, admittedly, in the commercial space, for example, for VS Code, there are way more powerful workflows right now with Cursor and Windsurf and all of these commercially powered tools. And open source usually takes some time to get to the same level, but I think it's gonna get there pretty soon. And I see a lot of development in this space. And as Adham said, I think it has the power to be way more powerful in Emacs, given the extensibility of it and all of the ways you can do this with. As soon as there will be like a full, let's say, agentic framework that you can call from everywhere, and even the companies that do Cursor, they basically currently limit themselves to the market of people that use VS Code, and many developers won't switch because they are way too comfortable with their tools, and it's not worth it. They will have at some point to make a way to add those tools to like a multi-editor support, or like have plugins. And once that is possible, Emacs will devour it, and you'll be able to use all of these tools.
Yeah, I can definitely see something like that happening. Yeah. Okay, so I will be heading out right now. Thank you everyone for coming, and I will see you around. Bye.
Thanks so much, Adham.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
So for those who may wish to stay longer, we can stay a little longer, and I'm still recording, but at some point I may stop the recording if we like, and then we chat a little further. Yeah, and that was amazing. Emacs is just about text, right? It is just a space where we transform text in all those many ways, and is extensible, as you said. So in a way, it is just perfectly compatible with the idea of generating text. Yeah, so I really like the way you concluded this part. And is there any short comment before we go to Baruch's discussion? Yeah, great. So Baruch, if you wish, we can, as you said, you can talk about it for a few minutes, and then we set up another call and you can talk about it more. And yeah, it would be great.
Yeah. So I'll see if I can get my screen sharing going. I need to quit here. Leave meeting, because I joined with a different computer. I'm using a different computer as well.
Oh, yeah.
Might take a second. So I've been working with LLMs for quite some time. I was thinking, well, what will happen if these things get better than they already are? What will happen is they will be able to write code better than you, or faster than you, and they might even do multiple iterations at the same time. So I just wanted to bring it into the REPL and see what it does. And my experience have been, yeah, it's pretty damn good and like kind of surprisingly good actually. So I need to open Zoom again. See if that finds the old meeting. Nope, just a second.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I think Jarkko, earlier you wanted to say something and I stopped you. So maybe you wish to come back to that, Jarkko, before we continue.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just like with these different sizes of the models. It's like the ones that you can run on the chunky GPU. They're just coming to smaller and smaller devices, and the same like some that you cannot fit and run at home. Those will also kind of soon be available at some more portable devices, and that's like how the technology kind of traditionally goes. So it's quite interesting to, yeah, so just be testing and finding what kind of what would be available in 5 years, for example, on some small device.
Yeah, well, 5 years is way too far out to understand, I think. But from my experience, I've been running models locally as well. I have actually I can show you, I guess. So this is what I was thinking of. I work a lot with Clojure scripts, so the browser is my preferred tool. It's super powerful. I can create a node. This is just the user message node. Say hello. And then this will go to cloud right now. But say I wanted to have a different model, I can create a system node, message node, and I have a bunch of it's not pretty, but it definitely has the backend developer feel to it. But here I've got these models that I can select from, and the default would be Sonnet. I keep trying out new models, and then I need to clean it up. So as you can see here, I currently have DeepSeek running on my server in the attic, and it's quite beefy. So this is a reasoning model, so I could say something about hello, what do you know about core.async? Okay, so you can see it's quite fast.
This is so cool.
Yeah, because my server is really strong. So, but the thing is, this is a thinking model. So this is basically the markdown version. So you can see it has bolded texts and stuff like that. So it didn't actually think. That's the first time I've seen it not think. It opened the think tags, but it didn't actually think because I opened my sentence with hello, so it doesn't see anything. But that might be difficult. So if I try it again, it does start the reasoning process. Trying it again, and yeah. So let me wait until it's finished thinking. So it's really overthinking right now. It's kind of funny. Okay, so now you can see it started doing markdown. So probably it has been trained to first have an XML tag and then simulate human thinking, and then finally, after thinking, form an answer as a normal large language model would. So you could parse out this thinking part, and then it would be kind of like a normal LLM. So as you can see here, it ends the think tag and then starts with the actual answer. This is the raw formatting. So this is my local model, but the real power that I want to show off is basically when you give it tools. So let me clear the canvas.
Yeah.
And I have a basic planner. That's what I called it. So I can ask stuff here. So hey, can you test your tool calling just eval some Clojure? This will go to cloud. And as you can see, there's some XML doing a tool call, and it gets a result. So it's doing some more. The cool part is it keeps going until it thinks that the task has been solved. In this case, it's not that interesting. It just did some arithmetic. But yeah, it does really show how LLMs work quite well, because I can reveal the nodes that are connected to this, which is one system node, and then there are tool nodes. it's kind of messed up right now.
Can you show?
the layout.
Okay, there you gave it like. No, where do you define the tools? Tool node. Okay.
Yeah, so I do here. So usually it would show it here, but I only show it in raw here right now, so it's kind of broken. I didn't really prepare to present well. So this is the tool. So I just define it in the JSON format. Like the annoying part is each large language model has a slightly different API. Most of them take like an open API kind of specification or a JSON schema specification.
Yeah.
So I just and then in my Canvas code, I then see that it does a tool call and I dispatch to the right tool, and you can also do Clojure scripts. So for example, okay, now try Clojure scripts. And then starts to do that. Yeah, so as you can see, the zooming is a bit janky because I can zoom around with my touchpad, but also I've built in that it will zoom to where the activity on the board is. So
This
yeah,
is
as you can see,
awesome.
it's also working on the Clojure script.
Is this open source?
No, it's not open source. I don't want to open the source either. So
Why?
it's not nice code, and I'm all the time changing it, and I don't want to. It's just my personal working tools.
That's
Also,
not a valid,
it's basically
that's not a valid reason.
okay. The valid reason is it would cost me a lot of time to make it to take out my personal projects, because that's, I guess, the next thing that I would show is this is running my other project. So I have another side project that I now load here, which is I'm building a Korean learning app. And so one thing that is really shows off the power of this tool calling stuff, because the other thing is using a REPL to do some basic arithmetic. It's not that interesting, but you have a look. Let me clear the canvas and make a basic planner. Hello. So let me, for example, show you that it can actually change this application that I have right here. So I think this is in categories. So I copy in Emacs the file path. Hello, open, and make the category components red. So it opens the file, which is the code file I have right here. I can see that it has category item component. Let's modify it to make it red. Now there's no system prompt at all, right? It just opens the file and it knows. Okay, so I have to open there is a system prompt. That's a lie, actually, but I'll talk about it more. So it actually changed this code. One issue is that if it uses new CSS, it's not updated immediately. Okay, I'll ask it to make it smaller. Can you make them square? Because the Tailwind automatically hot swaps your CSS, and also my React thing also automatically hot swaps the React component. Okay, so it did something. See, now it's. Okay. I meant like same height and width. So it actually works. So if you pay attention now, it's writing the component code, immediately evaluating it. React hot reloads it, and it's actually working. So this is a real co-pilot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You have a moral responsibility to open source this, or at least write a blog post about it. Honestly, it's a shame if this is only for yourself.
Yeah, I know I should.
I've never seen anything like this. Like, why?
It's super cool, man. You definitely do a full presentation even on the code if you can.
I want to see more of this.
Yes.
Yeah. So the cool thing is it also does the backend. So I could also have it iterate on Pathom and do queries and.
I specifically like on VoiceFN, the real-time conversation thing I'm building. This is something that I would like because sometimes with LLMs, if you give them like a very big prompt, they will tend to not work well. So it is better if you can give it like a conversation tree, right? To go from one node to the other and like now switch the system prompt to something different because you're on this path of the conversation, right?
Yeah.
And so you kind of
that's the reason I wanted to do the Canvas thing. So I could Yeah, it's really small. I need to make the CSS a bit bigger, but
Yeah, man.
okay. Can you make them square? Can you make them pink? And pink. And so if I run this now, it doesn't have the previous context, so it will go back to the components that it's seen earlier. So as you can see, it did move back to that. So as I said, the CSS thing is still not working. So if I paste in this code, okay, so it's still typing. Okay, it's finished. If I actually paste in this code, it will also do the proper HTML, the CSS reloading. Oh, okay, it's still not pink. I don't know why. I guess Tailwind might not be running. Tailwind crashes every now and then.
Yeah, but like also Tailwind, if it generates a new class, Tailwind GIT compiler will not get that because it's not in a file. So it will not generate a class if it's not written in a file somewhere.
It is actually running, so I don't know. No, I'm using Tailwind 4, so I don't know. So far it has been working. Like it just hot swaps the CSS. It's really cool. But I don't know why it's not working right now. Yeah, I didn't prevent it.
This reminds me
a little bit of this Comfy UI. The image generation tool has yeah, that's something I've seen, a bit similar kind of idea.
Yeah. I've looked at I'm basically addicted to all these LLM news outlets, and I've seen some of the UIs that people make, but they're mostly focused on role play, which is not interesting to me. But yeah,
yeah, definitely do a full presentation and present some code and how this works and everything like that, man.
Yeah, sure. So also, this is one of the parts. I'm also integrating a real-time voice assistant. This is using OpenAI's assistant. So I can talk to it, and then I also integrated tool calling into that.
But the downside is that one is pretty expensive.
It's not that bad with the GPT-4o mini model.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So but it's dumber, so you can definitely notice. But it's for a voice tutor, it's still okay. So one thing that I added is I have these categories here, and a subcategory, and then words, and then I have these sentences, and I break them down. Okay, that's not working right now. That sucks. Yeah. Okay. What I wanted to show is that OpenAI's real-time voice also has support for tool calling, and I added a tool call that basically shows what the user is seeing. So when you click a sentence and you have a breakdown, you can ask it in your real-time conversation, like, oh, what about this word? What does it mean? Or what does the sentence mean? That all works with the real-time voice assistant as well. It's so cool. Yeah. So short demo of what I've been working on.
Very nice, man.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for making it, and now we are hoping to have another one soon, hopefully you would like. And yeah, I think in a moment we will stop the recording, and I'll have to go. Does anybody wish to say anything before we stop the recording?
I had just one question for Ovi about the Minuet. I just installed and testing it. Does it have like a command to stop the process?
Yeah, it's a mode. It's a mode. It's a Minuet auto suggestion mode, and you can toggle it on and off for like the auto suggestions. And if you do like Minuet show suggestion,
I run the Minuet show suggestion, but the problem is that it seems to like it just halts the CPU. I put too much context or something. So with GPT-EL, you can just issue the abort command. I was looking if there was something similar with that, but couldn't find it.
I don't think so. I think you can just jack in if you go to the code. It uses PLZ, the request thing from Emacs, so maybe you can jack into that. The code is very hackable.
From terminal, but tried a bit. I will try a little bit more later. But yeah, thanks for
definitely. I think
tips.
you can interrupt basically the request. That doesn't mean it will interrupt the inference on your GPU if that started. It's just that Emacs will not wait to receive the response for it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. resource cleaning is really difficult.
Yeah.
And it's really annoying, like especially with these big models, when they start generating real big responses, and you should be able to cancel them. I just removed them from the UI, but definitely my server still, the fans are still blowing, right?
Yeah.
Let me wake up my partner and spin up some more fans.
Yeah, and the final thing, just putting some public pressure on Baruch to at least do a blog post or like put some gists of how you wrote this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Whatever we can do to pressure Baruch. Yeah, thank you so much for this. It was really lovely and so insightful. We'll now say goodbye to the recording and see you on the next time.